You've done a lousy job as the leader, really.
Despite that, you did step up, and you do have potential.
Now, Sam, you gotta be careful, because
will.
you're a wild man. You'll do great, or you'll be a total disaster. I haven't figured it out yet.
But I'll let you answer that. You consider yourself the leader of the Democrats? I think it's more appropriate for him.
I consider myself the next mayor of New York City.
I always said, one of the things I would love to be someday is the mayor of New York City. Being the mayor of New York, and especially now, because I think you're at really a turning point. It could go great, or it can go in a different direction.
It's Britney, bitch.
And the Iraq, everywhere like such as.
I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Out, Charlie! Out!
Our next door neighbors are foreign countries.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Remember Shuffle. My name is Ben. With me as always is my co-host Giordano.
Hello, Ben. It's great to be here. It's great to be here on one of the top podcasts of the world. I've been a big fan. I've been meaning to come on for a long time. I loved your episode on the Da Vinci Code. Fantastic series. Love that book.
Exactly what the world needs. Another Trump impression. And today we are discussing The Apprentice for our 100th episode spectacular. We are, of course, discussing the 2000s reality TV show and not the movie that came out a couple years ago about Donald Trump. So, Giordano, this is your brainchild. Walk us through The Apprentice. Why does it matter? Why is it important? Does it need to be said?
We always talk about our echoes in the culture, and sometimes we have to do a little bit of thinking, but the stupid world that we all have to now live in is a result of this show's popularity. Everybody knows that Donald Trump ran for president because he wanted to up his notoriety and bargaining power with NBC before his season 15 renegotiation. But it also created the avatar of Trump that most people know him by. And we'll talk more about this later, but the concept of Trump in our popular imagination was solidified by the show The Apprentice, right? You know, he would be like on the cover of Playboy or like appear on Howard Stern, but he didn't really have a vehicle for America at large. And this show, it mythologized him, right? As this like great businessman. And it was in the show's interest to present him as a captain of industry. And as a result, it solidified his image for America.
Yeah, it's hard to overstate how important it was in giving us Trump the politician for both of these reasons. There's the image and branding reason that it gave him, the wind it put in his sails, and then the, like you just said, Giordano, the like pure brass tacks of I'm gonna run for president as part of a TV contract renegotiation. You don't need to kill baby Hitler in the crib to prevent Trump from happening. You just need to stop Mark Burnett from making The Apprentice, and we probably don't get the Trump presidency. You can stop all of this with a time machine with way less blood on your hands.
Yeah, you just have to go to the Falkland Islands in 1981. Shoot Mark Burnett.
You need to enlist with the Argentinian junta. You need to add him to the list of dozens of casualties of that war.
Like everybody knows, Trump is very charismatic, right? And he didn't really like have a vehicle for that charisma until this show, or at least like a regular vehicle for his career. Like, you know, like I said, he'd go on Howard Stern, he'd have an interview in Esquire, but like, you know, he didn't go on SNL until he hosted The Apprentice.
And it's just so crazy to think about. We just did our Survivor episode, this stupid genre that's built on exploitation. We'll talk more about that today. This genre that is so lowbrow and so much the crass product of market forces can give us a man of such significance. Like, can someone check in on the Fear Factor guy? What's he up to now? Did he have a similarly meteoric rise from this dumb genre?
Survivor was, like I said, a treat to watch. The Apprentice is not as good of a show. No. I think that at times it can have interesting pieces, and I do think that Donald Trump is a good host, but it's just so clearly produced for an audience in a way that gets away from reality. It feels much more like eating candy than watching Survivor.
Yeah.
That's the problem with reality TV, I think, in general, right? Is if you put on Love is Blind or something, I'll unfortunately enjoy watching it, but feel horrible like immediately after. Watching something like Love is Blind is a complete waste of time. There is no artistic value to it at all. But if you put it on, I'm sad to say, like, you kind of do get sucked in. But yeah, The Apprentice. You remember this show, Ben?
Sadly, I do. I think I watched a decent amount of season 1 when I was 14 years old live.
Wow. Okay, so you have something of an MBA then. I remember that was what was thrown around a lot at the time. Is like watching this show is the equivalent to doing an MBA because there's a lot of great business lessons in here.
That might actually be true, and it's not because The Apprentice is good. It's because an MBA is fucking stupid.
I guess as a type of grad school, you disagree with it fundamentally.
Yes, I do. It should not be at a university. Like, this is how it used to be in Germany, apparently. Anything to do with making money like a business was considered a skilled trade. In the same place where you would learn to do carpentry or plumbing, you would learn to run a business. Because you are not contributing to the sum total of human knowledge. You are not advancing any kind of field in it. And it is only because of globalization, where all of our universities had to look a lot more like each other, that these German universities, some of which dated back to the medieval era, had to begrudgingly let in the business schools into their august institutions of higher education.
I found an article that I'll quickly quote here. This was Laura Schildkraut, a lecturer at the University of Washington Business School, and she thinks, quote, "The Apprentice is a useful way to cut through dry old theory and show business students what real life will be like. So she actually plays bits of the show in her classroom. I think what it's going to do for these kids is it's going to give them a little bit of a head start when they get out there. It's going to make them a little bit more savvy. It's going to make them a little bit more knowledgeable. And hopefully it'll give them some tools to deal with some tricky situations." I think the word "a little bit" is doing a lot of work there. Because as we'll see in this episode, the actual business insights offered by this show are incredibly trite and cliche and not substantive at all.
Yeah, the only insights you get is, how do I deal with a fickle, megalomaniacal narcissist whom I have to please at all costs? The lessons are in boss management more than business management.
Yes, actually, that's one of our themes that we'll get to later. Is I think it offers the average office worker some lessons in how to supplicate and speak as a middle manager, if anything. But anyway, we'll get to that. So our bibliography this week, we both read a book called The Apprentice in Wonderland, written by Raman Satude, who was the editor-in-chief of Variety. I really enjoyed this book. I read it twice. The guy who does an impression of Trump in the audiobook is very good. And it's actually done using a ton of interviews with Donald Trump in 2021, which we'll get to later.
It's incredible. Strong recommendation. Really great stuff. We also read the chapter on The Apprentice from Cue the Sun, which we used in our previous episode on Survivor. Also an incredible book on reality television. Our roadmap for today, we are going to discuss the history of The Apprentice. We'll discuss the format of the show. We'll give a plot recap of season 1 of The Apprentice and The Celebrity Apprentice before moving on to our themes and big ideas, including branding, middle management, reality TV as the new media, racism and sexism. As always, we'll do our echoes in the culture, which are so fucking self-evident this week.
16 candidates arrived in New York for a 13-week competitive job interview.
This is the chance to work for me at a huge salary, and more importantly, learn enough so that maybe they too can become a billionaire someday. This is going to be the dream job of a lifetime.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the history of The Apprentice. So we did Survivor last week on purpose because that was Mark Burnett, him making it big, you know, his sort of initial foray into American primetime network television. And he's at it again, folks. But this time it's Survivor, but for a business setting. He wanted to bring Survivor into, quote, the jungle of the business world, as Mark Burnett might put it.
Which is also a line spoken by Donald Trump in the pilot episode. They really thought they had hit the nail on the head with this metaphor. You know, New York is the real jungle, is a thing that I think Donald Trump says.
Yeah, you know, the business world is something of a jungle too, if you think about it. Remember, Mark Burnett, he's someone who's obsessed with the American dream. Of course, he would be interested in telling a story about American business success because he mythologizes it so much himself. Mark Burnett also described in his 2005 memoir that he came up with the idea for The Apprentice after seeing carnivorous ants in Africa, whatever that means. I think maybe just the idea of the ants like fighting for their lives and like eating each other.
They're also all expendable drones, which is probably how he views contestants on reality TV.
Yeah, or the workers.
Yeah.
So Survivor was on CBS. You'll note The Apprentice not on CBS, but on NBC. And if you're wondering why, it's because Burnett had swindled CBS so hard on the sponsorship deal. Remember on Survivor, they would get dropped like a crate of supplies from Target, and Burnett got to keep, I think, half of that money, which CBS was so pissed about, and he would not let them out of that deal. And so they wouldn't work with him on another show unless he changed the deal, which he wouldn't. So he sold the idea to NBC, which was kind of floundering at the time. It was about to lose Friends. Friends was in its final season this year. I would love to do an episode on Friends one day, by the way. These late seasons specifically, they're so bad.
If you want to talk about a real business genius, it's Mark fucking Burnett, man. He invents reality TV, gets 2 ludicrously successful shows on 2 networks. All throughout the Apprentice in Wonderland book, they have these little stories about Mark Burnett, even when he's hands off, even when he's not like the showrunner anymore, keeping his hand on the wheel in some way, shape, or form. So when Trump is thinking for running for president in 2012 against Obama, Burnett is the one who talks him out of it to keep doing The Apprentice. He is a hustler.
Yeah, I mean, this is someone who got one over on Les Moonves and Jeff Zucker. He is a shrewd businessman. He seems like an insanely annoying guy now. You know, he wears insane clothing and is always trying to get into parties at Sundance, but born-again Christian now. But on this, Trump was talking about Les Moonves' decision. Les Moonves is the head of Viacom and CBS, by the way. On his decision to pass on The Apprentice. And Trump said, if Les Moonves was on The Apprentice by the 3rd episode, I would have said, you're fired. And unlike most people, I actually like Les Moonves. In that perfect Trump way of speaking, of effortlessly giving out a backhanded compliment. NBC had actually tried to get into the reality TV space. They made a show called The Restaurant, which when I was watching The Apprentice, I kept seeing like the banners for it at the bottom of the screen, like catch the restaurant. They actually tried to make a real reality TV show about the running of a restaurant that wasn't a fake version of reality. And it turns out nobody really wanted to watch that because real life is actually kind of boring.
And it's crazy because, you know, you're always wondering what the fuck's going on back there when you're at a restaurant. And as we know from the success of the drama The Bear, and as we know from the success of all those fucking Gordon Ramsay kitchen nightmare kitchen children shows, people are willing to watch restaurant content, but only if it's like gussied up with a little bit of drama. They don't want to see the actual inner workings.
Yeah, only if it's like Vanderpump Rules and you're hiring only hot people and it's like a LA crowd. And you're specifically like trying to highlight the drama of young people. By the way, you said he had 2 successful shows. Mark Burnett has a lot more than 2 successful shows. I mean, this is a guy who made Shark Tank and a bunch of other shows, but he goes out searching for like a business magnet for the first season that he can use as a host. And Donald Trump is kind of at a low point in his life, or at least like a local minima at this point. You know, he's divorced, bankrupt, and they meet at Woolman Rink, which Trump had arranged as a location for the Survivor Season 4 finale because they had issues with the location after they couldn't film in Jordan due to September 11th. You know, they meet here, and Trump is really open to it. I mean, Trump will do any media appearance. We'll come to find out in this book. He'll speak to anyone, right? The View, Pro Wrestling, Home Alone 2. He sees it for what it is, which is free media.
Yeah, he was considered one of the easiest gets in New York City. Larry King, The View, like you phone him up, he's fucking there. He is always down to clown.
Yeah, and he's in New York, so you know he can make it too. And in their first meeting, Burnett flattered Trump by praising The Art of the Deal, calling it the most important book he had ever read.
In this case, it might actually be true, but if you asked him
Right.
this question today, he would say the Bible is the most important book he's ever read.
The Art of the Deal and then the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So Trump, they only intended for him to host for one season. So he's only paid $25,000 an episode in that first season, which will come back to bite NBC in the ass, because NBC actually figures after this first season, when they're trying to renegotiate with him, that he's worth about $200 million per season. So Trump actually, in his renegotiation after season 1, he says, listen, friends, they're paid $1 million an episode. There's only one of me. Therefore, you should pay me $6 million.
Multiplied by the 14 episode season. Just an absurd paycheck. And I think now might be a great time to point out, the show was envisioned as having a new titan of industry for every season. So start out with Trump and his media empire. They had put out feelers for Richard Branson of the Virgin Group for season 2, but Trump was too successful, so they just kept riding with Trump. And I would like to imagine what this show would look like today with our titans of industry and what kind of challenges you might have. You know, a Peter Thiel episode.
Oh my God.
It's like, you know, potential apprentices. You need to dispose of this young man's body on Peter Thiel's yacht. Or you need to acquire 6 pints of blood from the streets of Manhattan for Peter Thiel.
Yeah, and the younger the blood boys are from, the more you win. You need to get Elon Musk's sperm. You need to keep it warm and get it to an applicant in New Mexico. Yeah, it's funny how much of our titans of industry have fallen off in terms of charisma. You know, that we've gone from like Donald Trump to Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, your challenge is you must spend 25 minutes alone in a room with Mark Zuckerberg.
But yeah, I mean, I think Trump, he was kind of this 80s or 90s guy, you know, a finance Gordon Gekko style guy, right? And in the 2000s, you know, we're seeing, like we talked about last episode, the biggest media change is the invention of reality TV. And Trump gets on in this first season and is so good at it. And he kind of embodies the media spirit of the time in that he becomes the host of one of these shows. It totally changes his life. He's in heaven. People are yelling at him on the street again, you're fired, and people are happy to see him. Really, this is the job he was born to do. Right? He is a good host. You've seen that clip of him talking about, you know, if someone should leave their boyfriend. He really enjoys this, as we'll see.
I work really long hours, and my boyfriend is starting to think that I may be cheating on him.
Whoa, are you cheating?
I am not, Donald. How do I assure him that when I'm at work, I'm actually doing work and not someone else?
I think if he has that in the back of his mind, I mean, do you love him that much?
Absolutely.
Can you live without him?
No, I cannot.
Because, you know, if
live
he
without him.
has that now in the back of his mind, that could be trouble.
How long have you been with him?
12 years.
And how old are you?
32.
And why boyfriend? He's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Another show.
Then maybe they need to break up.
And you know what? I'm looking at you. You will have no trouble getting guys.
Don't forget, like, Trump wanted to be a producer originally, like a television and movie producer, before his dad put an end to that dream.
I should put the caveat. With copious editing, he is a good host. But the book makes clear that, like, reading a prompter or memorizing lines, those aren't his strong suits.
What do you mean? I did it first take every time. And you know that it's very expensive to redo that.
Yeah, I mean, he likes to glad hand with people. And one of the most shocking things from the book was how all of these contestants just had such glowing things to say about this guy that we all know and have feelings about.
So they have a host, and now the next task is to put together 16 contestants. So they interview thousands of people across America, and they tend to try and choose people based on 2 criteria. The first being that you have to have a thing. You have to fit an archetype that people can easily be like, oh yeah, that's the cowboy. That's the asshole.
That's the blonde real estate agent with big titties.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you go to the Comedy Cellar, I've heard that like they try to hire comedians who have an identity. And I think that that's what they tried to do with the contestants. And then also you have to be combative, like have a personality that fights back. And so Mark Burnett, they talked about how during the interview process, he would insult you, right? And like try to get under your skin so that you would fight back with him. So he would say something to you like, is that purse fake? It's fake, isn't it? Trying to find the people who would say, like the one girl there, she would say, my Gucci purse is not fake. Is your stupid fucking hat fake? You're trying to get people who are fiery. Mark Burnett was wearing an Australian Outback hat at the time.
And in one season, I think it's either 3 or 4, if I recall from the book, when Mark Burnett was less hands-on, they accidentally ended up with all these born-again Christians on The Apprentice, and they kept praying together when they were on the team. It made for horrible television. Mark Burnett and Trump understand that in order for reality TV to work, you need socially maladjusted weirdos, aggressive, narcissistic, fiery maladroits.
Yeah, and just to wrap up this history section, the show is a big hit. The ratings are super high. It is a water cooler show at the office. There's this amazing scene in the book where Trump is describing the ratings to the author of the book, and Trump has like a little wall of fame in his office where it's all of these ornate frames inches from each other, and he points to one sheet of paper, which is the Nielsen ratings from the first season, and he says, "Look at those ratings." And they just like stand there for a second, and the author, realizing that Trump doesn't know how to read a Nielsen chart, just stares with him, and the author reads in his head like, okay, it's a 34 share, which means 34% of adults 18 to 49 who were watching TV were watching The Apprentice. And they just stand there, and Trump goes, "Look at those ratings, 34 million viewers." Which is funny because
our titan of industry can't read a graph.
Yeah, and it's like, no, it's a 34 share. It's actually 40 million viewers. Like, it's actually more. And Trump says it could be higher, but he doesn't want to admit that he doesn't know how to read a Nielsen chart. So he covers up this error by inventing a new statistic, pretending that there were more successful seasons of The Apprentice that aired. And this wasn't even the biggest show. The biggest show had 42 million. So he just starts making numbers up.
It totally aligns with the Donald Trump presidency that we live through. This is a man who's obsessed with polls, who's obsessed with the crowd size, and then just makes up the fucking numbers, right? He's always been this way. And the funniest thing about The Apprentice is that its most successful season is this first one. Each successive season gets worse and worse ratings than the previous year. The primary reason it runs so long is that it's on fucking NBC, who are desperate for anything. And then in 2007-8, there's a writer's strike. So they want to keep the reality TV faucet on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the premise wears a little thin after that first season, which we'll get into. But in this first season, this is the only season I think that I find watchable. I think it would probably be a tremendous waste of time to watch any more than one season of this show.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the premise of the show, just in case, you've never seen it. There's 2 teams. And each week they do a business challenge or like a case study. If you ever did a business case study in college, it's very similar to that. And then the losing team has one member eliminated or fired, you could say, by Donald Trump. The case studies generally have to do with either marketing or sales or design. I think that they're like generally interesting. Given Mark Burnett's personal mythos, this challenge design makes sense. I mean, this is a guy who made most of his money from Survivor and on this show from branding deals, right? He is obsessed with branding and deals and exposure and sort of selling ancillary products. This is a guy who first made money in America from selling t-shirts on Venice Beach, which honestly sounds like it should have been a challenge on The Apprentice at some point. I took a look and they never did it, but I'm shocked. And then the other sort of wrinkle to this show is that every week for the challenge, teams elect a project manager. And so they're sort of like the leader. They get to delegate tasks. They get to make key strategy decisions. But then they also have to take a majority of the blame if they lose that week. And so they will go to the boardroom as well as 2 other people of their choosing. And then Trump chooses from one of those 3 people in a highly tense boardroom scene for who to fire.
Which are the best scenes of the show, right? The
Yes.
ones where he is on screen, grilling them, they're throwing each other under the bus.
I agree with you. I think those were the best scenes. I watched the show. I said, I'm not even on this for most of it. One of the notes that Trump had, by the way, for Mark Burnett is, I don't even show up until most of the way through the show. Why don't you make the boardroom scenes longer?
The only thing I would add to what you said, Giordano, is that these contestants also need to live with each other. They need to live with each other in a loft in Trump Tower in season 1.
Those are the worst parts parts of the show to me. I hated all of this interpersonal drama of them living together. I don't care for it. It's not what I'm here for.
Because it doesn't have the mechanics that Survivor does, that we praised on last week's episode, where it doesn't really matter if you antagonize all of these people because they're not voting at the end. The final decision is just Donald Trump's. He's the judge, jury, executioner. Yeah, a lot of these deal making behind the scenes and interpersonal relationships, they're not that interesting and they don't really matter for the game show element of it.
There's also just a lot less strategy than Survivor because it is all just dependent on Trump. You can make a deal with someone to not bring you into the boardroom, but like ultimately Trump's going to fire the person who performed the least well that week, or at least defends themselves the least well that week.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of each episode, we go to the boardroom, and these like boardroom sessions, the book was saying that they would take often 4 hours of footage filming these boardroom scenes. And Trump complained like, you know, they cut a lot of that boardroom footage, which I think is a mistake. And it's like, yeah, you filmed 4 hours of it. It's a 44-minute show. They're going to have to cut some, dude. But I think Trump just loves arguing and he loves holding court. He is in a position of authority and he gets to argue with people. And like, of course, this is a great position for Trump. And so he would drag this out for 4 hours. And it's very funny because he says he improvised the line, "You're fired." And for that reason, you're fired. And he said when he said it, the entire room went silent. The production team in the adjacent room was stunned. It was like the voice of God had come down and touched them.
He thinks about these two words so much that when they tried to give it to Arnold Schwarzenegger and he was hating on Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was like, he can't deliver the line, "You're fired." He says it too slow. He's thought about the mechanics of the delivery of these two words, 3 syllables.
He thinks that for a moment, God came down and touched him with this stroke of genius of "You're fired." Originally, the line the producers had given him was like, "And for that reason, you have to go home," or something. But yeah, this is the catchphrase, right? This is the tribe has spoken. You know, is that your final answer? When I was watching the finale, it said, go to NBC.com for "You're fired" merchandise.
And then in the season finale, he gets to flip the script. You're waiting for him to say "you're fired," but what does he say instead? "You're hired."
Yeah, because the winner of the show, unlike Survivor where you win $1 million, the winner of The Apprentice gets a job. You get to become a president of one of Donald Trump's companies. This is what they're all fighting for viciously every week. It's much like the Coyote Ugly TV show, reality show that we talked about in our Coyote Ugly episode. The winner of the show gets a job.
Now, we should say it is a well-paid job. It's a $250,000 a year job. It's probably got health insurance. It's not nothing. That would change a lot of people's lives. But still, the idea that what these people put themselves through, 3 months away from their jobs and families, they need to turn in their cell phones. They need to turn in their wallets, their identification. You are putting yourself at the whim of the fucking show. You're putting a lot on the line for your fake job in a Trump company, which, like, we know now, that company might not last the fucking year you're president of it, man. They fold all the time.
It's also revealed that it's not really like a job. It's a, you know, quote unquote president, but Trump admits, like, it's not really realistic to make someone a president of like a multi-million-dollar company. You end up getting hired instead as a owner's representative and mostly doing promotional stuff, you know, like appearing at the golf course during charity events and stuff like that, which is so funny to me that as like a game show, you can just pull the rug out. Imagine like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire being like, well, it's not really realistic for us to give you $1 million.
It is some Tony Soprano shit. We're going to find you a nice no-show job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a 1-year contract, and very rarely do people stay for longer than a year because it is a nothing job. It offers you like no real work experience. It's probably like a job in the same way that Don Jr. and the other one, Eric, have a job where it's like, yeah, you like show up to cut a ribbon and make a decision, you know, that's already really been made and kind of point to a color and be like, I like that color or whatever.
Yeah. The Where Are They Now sections of the book were very funny in terms of where the winners choose to go, because they get to choose which company. And yeah, obviously, most of these people who went on a reality show choose something in the Trump family of corporations that has to do with the media in some way, shape, or form. But every now and then you hear one who's like, this guy went to go try and save the Trump Taj Mahal, a struggling casino, or like this one became president of like an actual active construction site or whatever. Some wild ones in there.
I mean, I don't think they are actually doing management of construction. That was like, Bill Ranchich, the winner of season 1, ostensibly became the head of the construction of the very famous Trump Tower in Chicago. A beautiful building, probably one of Chicago's most famous buildings. One of the top buildings, actually, of the world. And yeah, they would never put someone who won a game show in charge of that, right? Like the stakes are far too high. And so Bill, he ends up just like hosting an E show after all of these people, all of the winners just go into showbiz or try to go into show business. I took a look at some Where Are They Nows, and like everybody's job title, if you were on the show, is like a motivational speaker.
Yeah. I found one of them on Cameo. Sam. We'll talk about Sam in a second.
So that's sort of like the basic premise of like the game show. But every episode has a couple other things that, it was a little sprinkling of a garnish, if you will, of other materials to present to you. One of which is Trump's business wisdom nuggets. So every episode typically will feature a, 1-minute clip of Trump giving you a business lesson direct to the audience, right? Like a lecturer from the Wharton School beamed right into your house. How useful is that? It reminded me a lot of like Seinfeld. You remember Seinfeld? Jerry would do like a stand-up bit that was sort of like encapsulating the basic premise of the Seinfeld episode, right?
Yeah, coming back from commercials, these little interstitials.
Right. So that it's an interstitial where Trump will deliver a business lesson that kind of encapsulates the main thesis of the episode's challenge, right? And they are all so asinine. For the most part, they're just general tautologies, right? So it's like, a deal is a deal. Once the handshake has been made, it has to be honored, right? Which, okay, a deal is a deal, yes. It's ironic, of course, coming from Trump. The most like reneged man on the planet. Or like the business wisdom he offers you in one episode is a penny saved is a penny saved, which is like somehow less of a useful business lesson than a penny saved is a penny earned, which is the traditional cliche.
I want you to take a cliche and now I want you to make it less insightful.
Yeah, of course the thing is the thing.
I've had it with these post-structuralists asking what is a penny. I've had it with the Marxists asking where the value of the penny is. A penny saved is a penny saved.
A penny saved is a penny saved. A lot of people don't realize that.
It is not a simulacrum, folks. It's not a copy of a copy of a copy without an original anymore. It just is the thing that it is.
Millions of people in 2005 furiously writing this down in their notebook. One of my favorites was in season 1, episode 9, they have to sell art, right? So they get to choose an artist, and one team chooses an artist that they don't love, but they choose them because their art costs more. So they figure, oh, they're probably a better artist. And so they lose. It's Omarosa's team. But Trump's business lesson in this episode is you have to believe in what you're selling. Very important in business. Which is so funny because this is right after the Trump Ice episode, which is not the government agency, but a brand of bottled water that he was trying to hawk at the time. Does he really believe in the bottled water?
That man doesn't drink water, okay? We can just say it. That man drinks nothing but Diet Coke. He's never had a glass of water before in his life.
And, there's only so many of these business cliches that you can run with. So you have to believe in what you're selling. Not to be confused with season 2's business lesson. Sell your ideas. You have to have faith in your products in order to sell them successfully. So a lot of overlap with a lot of these business lessons. But here were some of my other favorites. Imagine an interstitial where Trump is like, in business, you have to be respected. There are several traits of a leader. However, respect is a common trait many of them have. Without respect, one can't be a leader.
I love this one because it's almost entirely outside of your control. It's a command, but it's the passive voice of the verb. You, be respected by others. It's like, well, I mean, I can try, but that ball's really in other people's court. Notice how it's not be respectful, which is something you could control. It's be respected.
Not to be confused, by the way, with the season 4 lesson, inspire your people. You have to inspire people for them to respect you. This monologue actually features Trump talking to his lawyer and then bringing in the Miss Universe 2004 winner to like sit next to him and say hi to him. This was his way of inspiring his lawyer, is to be like, look at this beautiful woman. That's Trump inspiring his people.
Look at this beautiful teenager.
Yeah. Some of the other business wisdom, like I said, this is like doing an MBA program. So you get other great lessons like deliver the goods. If you don't deliver the goods, talking a big game means nothing.
Why didn't he lock her up? Goods undelivered. Promises made, promises unkept.
You know what? I'm starting to think this guy might be something of a hypocrite. Another Trump lesson, be decisive. Be decisive and make sure you don't make a mistake.
God damn it.
So season 3, episode 10, the lesson in that one was know when to fold. Not to be confused with season 3, episode 11, let nothing get in your way, never give up. Oh, man.
Incredible.
I can't imagine how stupid you must have been to think that this show offered business value at the time. I remember my mom saying that to me, that I should watch The Apprentice because there's a lot of good business lessons in there.
Mm-hmm. This is all the funnier because the book describes after you're fired, you have to live sequestered in a hotel. And Donald Trump, because he's a narcissist, because he loves attention, would keep hanging out with the losers. He just likes being around people. I mean, look at the fucking rallies he always does, right? And so the advice that he gave off mic, off camera to these people that they discuss almost entirely boils down to make sure you sign a prenup, because he's coming off of 2 divorces in the 90s. And there were at least 3 different stories in that book about him talking about how much money you can lose from getting married, about how sex can get you in a lot of trouble, about how you gotta sign a prenup, which is honestly kind of better advice than a lot of these business lessons.
Yeah, Trump's advice to some of the losers, because like I said, he loves the attention that the show is giving him, and so by extension he sees people who did the show with him as an extension of that, and he likes appearing in public with them, right? And so he's telling them, it's unbelievable. A lot of guys, if they're selling a company, they'll spend forever going over the contract with their lawyers, and yet they won't do the same for their prenup, and it's a much more important contract than their business contracts, which is like actually at least technically insightful, but none of that really translates. And it's funny, by like the 4th season, these business insights are getting so thin. I think one of them was just, I love golf. It's a great game. It's like, not a business insight.
Not even adding like you can hammer out deals on the golf course. Just, I like this. It's fun.
One of the other garnishes to the show are like, you remember how in Survivor they would show you a shot of like a lizard, running over a stone, or like a coconut falling out of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
There's always dozens of little shots of New York, right? People cycling through Times Square, children playing in a puddle in Central Park. It's a love letter to New York, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
The finale is always held in a live show in New York, like Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Mark Burnett move. So just before we do our season recaps, we've been shitting on the show a lot, and I want to talk about like what do I like about this show? What do I find redeemable about this show? So there are 2 things that I actually will say I enjoyed while watching this. The first was, like we said, the boardroom scenes were very good because they're arbitrated by Trump. He's an excellent instigator where, these people are living together, they've become friends, and then Trump will say, hey, who would you fire out of these 2 people, right? And so you're forced to attack your friends, and like you're forced to like throw each other under the bus and insult them and insult their performance. It's very much to me like the Joker breaking the pool cues in half and saying, fight for the job. I think he's a very good arbitrator of an argument, and he always knows like how to ask questions that will pit people against each other. And then the other part of the show I really like is I genuinely find the challenges in the first season to be very interesting because they're business case studies. So they'll do something like, okay, we're going to go to the Taj Mahal and each of you are going to register as many gamblers as you can. And whoever's team's registered gamblers gamble the most money in the next like 3 hours wins, right? And so what I like about this is much like Breath of the Wild, there's more than one solution to a problem. In business, it's kind of an art, right? You can approach this in an infinite number of ways. There's always an interesting marketing solution. And so for this one team goes out and gets like a big spinning wheel that they can spin around, and they can give out $1,000 to people who land on a specific space on the spinning wheel. So people are lined up to use this spinning wheel because who doesn't love spinning a free wheel? And then they announce the winner 4 hours later, and you you have to be there to claim it. And so the logic is you get them to spin, and then they have to stick around to see who won for 4 hours. So they gamble in that time.
And you've primed the pump of gambling with the wheel. That's the first gamble. You hit like the first dopamine there.
Yeah, and I think they make the wheel really easy to win. So like most people are winning the wheel, and then you don't announce the winner till later. That's kind of like an ingenious business solution, right? And there's so much freedom to tackle this problem however you want. There's an episode where they have to compete to see who can make more money with a rickshaw, and they both make like a couple $100s off of the rickshaws, but one team makes $3,000 from putting ads on the rickshaws, like going out and selling ad space. I just do like that these business challenges often offer you an infinite number of ways to win, and it's all up to like how creative you can be with how to make money.
Yeah.
I thought that was like generally interesting. And in this first season, when we get to it, I'll talk about like some of the more interesting challenges that year.
Mm-hmm.
The bad. In terms of like what I didn't like about this show, a lot of times the prize each week was so shitty. It was always like you get a tour of one of Donald Trump's properties. A lot of times it's like you get to meet one of Donald Trump's business friends, which in this first season included George Steinbrenner. There's another season where like, yeah, you get to meet Rudolph Giuliani.
This is just another challenge. This isn't a reward.
I don't want to meet Giuliani. Again, I don't want to watch someone meet Giuliani. That's not good TV.
Yeah. You're not putting yourself in your shoes? What would I do if I met Giuliani?
Right. Well, like we said about the challenges, sorry, and I forgot to mention that, but the challenge in the second week, for example, is you have to put together like an ad campaign for a private jet company. And so, you know, they spend like 6 hours putting together a print campaign and a commercial for like a private jet. And it is interesting to see, hey, what do a random cross section of like 20s and 30-year-olds, amateurs, lay people, like what would their work look like? What does their jet commercial look like? And do I think I could do better? I thought that was interesting to be like, what would the print ad campaign look like for a group of 20-year-olds who were not in advertising? What would Ben and I's commercial look like? I think that can be kind of interesting. It's like that concept for the Olympics where it's like having an average person Olympics or something.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do like a quick plot recap of season 1. You know, like we said, the highest rated season of the entire show. It was before the show was successful, so they didn't have a lot of corporate sponsors yet. Because as we'll see, the show will become very pay to play, you know, where every week is like, you're designing a sandwich for Quiznos or something. But season 1, they don't have any sponsors yet, really. And so like some of these challenges are legitimately neat. Go out and find an apartment in New York City and then renovate it in like 2 days and re-rent it. And what's the additional profit you got from like your 2 days worth of redesigning it and redecorating it, right? Or you have 8 hours to buy these 15 things. Let's say it's like a pound of calamari, a doorknob. You have to go out and buy those 15 things, and whoever buys them for the cheapest price wins. And so I think that's like a legitimately interesting scavenger hunt. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to go and you have to negotiate. You have to be like, which part of town might offer the cheapest calamari? It's kind of interesting to watch. There's another interesting challenge where you're given $600 and you have to go buy $600 of stuff, anything you want in New York City. And then we've reserved flea market space for you. And you have to resell that stuff at the flea market, and whoever sells it for the biggest profit wins. And I think that, again, like an interesting exercise, way more interesting than designing a new ice cream flavor for Trump's ice cream brand. Which is what we'll see more of in the future.
It's not really reflective of the types of business work that people would do after they get an MBA. This kind of scavenger reselling is, I don't know how transferable that skill is.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of thought. For example, one of the items is a gold bar. And so I remember having the same thought process as Kwame on one of the teams, which is you're trying to decide how much time to spend negotiating for each item. Are we going to go all the way uptown and try to get a cheaper price? For the gold bar, you know you're not really getting a discount on a gold bar. Like the price of that is highly standardized because it's gold. It's, you know, it's traded on an open market. So like, don't waste time trying to buy gold at a special place or trying to negotiate because that price is standardized. Now, the calamari or like leg wax, that's something where you might be able to negotiate or devote more of your time to trying to get a good price on.
You're thinking about this all wrong. You can fish your own calamari, Giordano.
We'll talk about Sam in a second, but that's the episode where he was the project manager. There's an episode I love where they have to run the Times Square plant at Hollywood. And so they compare your sales that night to the same night the year before to see who ran it better. But I love the way that Trump introduces this challenge.
Here it comes.
Here we go, guys.
Hello, folks.
Hello, Mr. Trump.
We're in the middle of Times Square, one of the great landmarks of the world. Behind me is Planet Hollywood, started by some movie star friends of mine.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about our characters, our cast this season in this most famous and prominent of seasons. So let's talk first about Sam. Sam is one of the most memorable characters of season 1. He is like a goat. Right, as we said in Survivor, he's just an annoying guy.
If he's an animal, he is a cokehead weasel. That is what he is.
He is so annoying. This is a guy who made it onto the show by bribing a security guard at the auditions for like $100, right? Because you had to line up for hours. So Sam gets in there, and when the producers are interviewing people in a group interview, he's like, "Oh yeah, I got in here because I gave the security guard $100."
So this is a guy who very famously, in the first episode, the very first challenge is to take all these people, many of whom have some kind of business background, like they're MBA grads, or they work in real estate, or they started their own cigar company or whatever, and they are forced to just sell lemonade on the streets of New York City. And it's men versus women, and it's not going well for the men. They've posted up at the South Street Seaport hoping for the lunch rush, but it smells like fish. It's like, it's not. They chose a shit location. If I were doing it, I would have gone outside of a school, but you probably can't do that on a reality TV show. But
Sam definitely can't.
No. And Sam, when he realizes how behind they are, he spends 25 minutes just accosting a stranger on the street, trying to sell him a cup of lemonade for $1,000.
Yeah, he figures this way I only have to sell one cup of lemonade. And he's trying to sell it. He's like, this cup of lemonade is America. Or it's like some nonsense like that. Sam's like one of the funniest combinations of people who's a very stupid person who believes he's very smart. You know, an archetype we talk a lot about on this pod. And so every week he's doing strategy and he thinks he's brilliant, but it's always just the dumbest strategy ever. He's made project manager for that episode where they have to buy a bunch of stuff and they all have to listen to him, which is so funny because he's so clearly a moron, but everyone has to listen to him, including people like Kwame, you know, someone with like a Harvard MBA. And of course he fails and Donald Trump is forced to fire him, which I think he doesn't want to do. Like Trump says, Sam, either you're going to be really great or not so good, because it's just like so clear that he's a moron who is just obsessed with his own intellect.
And he's a toady too. His version of intelligence is like, I just need to be the absolute sycophant to Donald Trump. Even getting on his knees before he goes in the boardroom and talks to the other two guys, like, I'm going to go in like this. And he like gets on his knees.
Yeah.
You can get a cameo from Sam Soloway for the reasonable price of $15 American.
Really? Oh, we should get him to do a Remember Shuffle promo.
Yeah.
But he's gone by the third episode because it's just so clear that he's an idiot that I think they would be undermining the nature of the show if they kept him around longer. But the other GOAT this season is Omarosa, who does manage to stay on the show until the final 5 or 6 because I think she's like a little bit better at least giving the producers plausible deniability for why she's still around. She's also clearly a moron, but she does it with at least a veneer of respectability, and so they're able to keep her around for much longer. But yeah, she is one of the most hateable figures in reality TV. You know, she was a political consultant who worked in Al Gore's office of the vice president. Someone from the Al Gore administration says, quote, she was the worst hire we ever made.
Yeah, she slipped right into the role of villain. She's like, I am going to be the villain. That's going to be my role. If Sam is a moron who thinks he's smart, she is actively malicious and antagonizing and relishes the role.
Yeah, she's very confrontational. So she loves to sling ad hominem insults at other people constantly in boardroom scenes. And the issue with Omarosa is if you don't return the insults, then like you're weak, right? And you allow her to have the last word. And if you do return the insults, then you're in the mud with her and you're at her level and you've basically defaced yourself by like participating in this. And so she's so aggravating to deal with. There's a quote here I have from season 1 where Omarosa says, she's emotionally unstable and unprofessional. And the person says, well, that's the pot calling the kettle black. And Omarosa responds, there you go with your racial slurs. You see what she says about black people? She's very intimidated by a black woman.
Jeez.
It's like, Oh, what are you supposed to do? Now you're in a bar trading session with Omarosa, and she's only here to do this. And so you're just going to reduce yourself to her level if you try to participate. She's one of the great reality TV insults. And we'll talk more about her later when we talk about like the nature of reality TV. But
yeah, her cameos, if you're curious, go for $693.
Holy shit.
That's specifically for a business cameo.
What the hell's a business cameo?
It's like she's going to give business advice to your business. Now, her personal cameos only start at $99. So, you know.
A bargain.
Yeah. 5 times as much as Sam's.
But yeah, she's very beautiful as well. It's hard to see that because she's such an uncomfortable person. She's made for TV. When they're redoing the apartment in that one challenge, there's like a little piece of plaster that hits her on the head and she has to like lay on the ground. She's not working because she's like, oh, I have a concussion. And they're like, come on. In the finale, she's actually one of the big reasons that Kwame loses, apart from like racism, but she just straight up doesn't do her job and then lies about it.
Oh, it is incredible. So the little twist that they do with the final one, there's only 2 guys left, Kwame and Bill eventually wins. This is them trying to kind of copy Survivor's Homework, where for the final challenge, they get to hire 3 of the eliminated contestants to be their employees. They don't get to vote, they don't get to choose the winner, but they come back and you get to build your team. And Kwame needs to organize a Jessica Simpson concert at the Trump Taj Mahal. And the most important thing is to get the performer and her band and her people, pick them up at the airport, bring them to the venue. And they're having dinner the night before the show. Omarosa gets a call on camera and just doesn't handle it. The call is about how the car isn't where it needs to be. Like, it's not at the right airport, or she didn't come in. There's some kind of logistics issue. And she just ignores the call. It's this George Costanza-ass move. I think she did it because she didn't want to interrupt the nice dinner. She says on the phone, we're having a dinner. And just ignores it. The next day rolls around, they're like, we lost the talent.
They lose Jessica Simpson. And then Kwame asks her, he's like, did you know about this? And she's like, no, I didn't. And it's like, you're on camera 24 hours a day. We just saw you get the call and refuse to answer it. Yeah, she's infuriating.
Yeah.
So the finale comes down to Bill Ranchich, a cigar shop owner from Chicago, and Kwame Jackson, who is a Harvard MBA graduate, actually, who I think was working for Merrill Lynch at the time. So it's not someone who needed this job. Yeah, so first they have to go through a 4-person job interview, right? With all Trump's top executives, George and Kathy. And then Bill has to run a charity golf tournament. These are the stakes to to our challenges here for the finale. You have to run a charity golf tournament that Trump is playing in. But Kwame ends up losing because of this screw up with Omarosa, partly. So 2 other characters from this season, Nick and Amy, who make it very far into the show, they start a little romance together. They have crushes on each other. Nick, who's 27, but because it's 2005, he looks like he's 38. It's like, it's so funny how much older people looked back then. But when Nick first starts talking about Amy as like a crush, he says like, yeah, you know, she's pretty and intelligent. She reminds me of my mom. I'm like, bro. Nick's dad comes on at one point as like a reward challenge, and he gets to meet Amy. And Nick's dad says, the one thing I have to warn Amy about is that, you know, Nick has a bad history with women. I'm like, if my dad ever said this to like a national TV audience, I would be so pissed. Oh yeah, then he says he's been through a lot of women. Nick's dad says this to a national TV audience. So good.
It would be cringe enough if the cameras weren't rolling. Just him saying that to a current partner is brutal.
Yeah, true. And then compounded with the fact that it's on TV. Amy is legitimately the smartest, most capable person on this show, but we have a section dedicated to this later in our sexism episode. So we'll table that for now. Well, one little short blurb about Nick. There's an episode where they have to sell Trump Ice, which is Trump's water bottle brand, which is doomed. Their goal is to sell 1,500 cases. Both teams come woefully short of this. But Nick, he's always talking about his sales abilities, right? He's a copier salesman. And Erica, the team leader, is trying to tell him about their sales strategy. And Nick interrupts her and says, trying to teach me about sales is like trying to teach the Pope about prayer. I'm a master. So we get to see Nick in the room, and he's going on and on about how Trump Ice is bottled thousands of miles from civilization, no mineral content. And the client just cuts him off and is like, look, dude, it's fucking water. How much does it cost? One more thing on season 1 that I thought was funny. Trump, he says, he'll be fired like a dog. One of the contestants, he'll be fired like a dog. Everything is like a dog with Trump. He died like a dog. Do dogs get fired?
It's because he has a vocabulary of 75 words.
So, all right, let's quickly talk about season 7. And the reason I want to talk about season 7 is it's the first season of the Celebrity Apprentice. This is the shot of life that NBC attempted to give this show, because like we said, it had declining ratings every season for the first 6 seasons. And so finally in like the 7th season, this is the first season to not have a decline in ratings, because they got, as Trump put it, an assembling of 20 of the most successful celebrities, which is so funny because the celebrity he has, it's not even the most successful Baldwin, let alone the most successful celebrities.
They didn't just get Joan Rivers. They also got Joan Rivers' daughter.
It's not even the second most successful Baldwin. They got Stephen Baldwin. Yeah, listen to some of the heavy hitters we had this year. Stephen Baldwin, Gene Simmons, Piers Morgan, Lennox Lewis. All the stars are here.
Omarosa came back as well, right?
Omarosa came back. The person who was like her only celebrity came from the show. Sort of a meta inclusion.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth pointing out the cannibalistic nature of reality TV in 2007, right? Where, yeah, you have the singer for Kiss playing right alongside someone who starred in a reality show. Piers Morgan himself, his breakout role was host on America's Got Talent, itself a reality show.
Yeah, do you remember this phase of reality TV when every show was starting to pivot towards the celebrity version? Because it's like, you start to run out of juice with the premise 3-4 years in. All of these shows did. Celebrity Survivor, Celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Celebrity Apprentice. It's just sort of the natural coup at your ratings declining. What are we going to do? I don't know. Get some C-list actors who want to be on TV, right?
Doubly hilarious because a huge part of the value add for reality TV is what happens when average people get put in extraordinary circumstances. Right. Now let's see what happens when celebrities do it. Are they just like us or not?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my main point here, is that it completely undermines the premise of the show for celebrities to be on here, right? Because now every challenge is stupid. Because none of it is based on business acumen, because all of these people have rich friends and are rich themselves, right? So what do I mean by this? When I talked about like the interesting sales competitions from previous years, first episode, for example, who could make the most money selling hot dogs in New York City? Is this an exercise in like marketing and sales and branding? No, because what happens? Gene Simmons calls up someone on the phone who comes down and actually spends $5,000 on a hot dog, right? And Trump's reaction is like, that's smart. That's leveraging your professional network, right? This is what happens in every single episode. Piers Morgan calls up Richard Branson, who gives him $10,000.
This is crazy, Jordeo. You're telling me that people with a high class status with capital behind them have an advantage in the world of business? That's crazy.
I mean, of course it's true. It's also just a fundamental betrayal of the thing that the show is supposed to offer you, right? Like the show, you know, the whole reason I'm supposed to be watching it is because it's a 13-week MBA, right? But it's like, but I can't call Richard Branson. So what am I supposed to do? And again, where it was interesting to see, like, yeah, how would a regular person market a hot dog or create a branding around it or like choose a location? All of that is irrelevant. The thing that's relevant every episode is what famous person are these people going to call? Right. And the producers love it because it's like, oh, we get to put a famous person's face on TV. Right. That's fun.
It is funny, Jordeo, that if you go to a business school or if you follow some of these stupid Instagram pages that are on personal finance or employment or business, one of the things they will always tell you is that you have to network. You can't call up Richard Branson. You haven't been networking hard enough. OK, you got to know Richard Branson to make it in this world.
Your network is your net worth, you know, as we know.
Take up fucking boogie boarding or whatever the hell he's up to nowadays. If you want to know Richard Branson, you better have a hot air balloon. That's an investment right there. And that's a piece of Ben business advice. Buy a hot air balloon. Only rich eccentrics have them.
It doesn't cost money. It makes money. So like in the first episode, for example, there's a Playboy playmate named Tiffany who Trump fires because as Trump explains to her, why didn't you have Hugh Hefner come and buy $1,000 hot dog.
He lives in Los Angeles, famously.
Yeah, she should have said that. The other basic betrayal of the premise of the show is because everyone is famous, this allows them to skip many of the useful sales and marketing fundamentals that a regular person might have used in a prior season, right? So it's like, if they need to sell hot dogs, for example, oh, well, Gene Simmons can sell a $50 hot dog that comes with an autograph, right? This happens throughout the season a lot, right? They're not actually selling the thing, they're selling access to this famous person or like access to the show itself. Like, hey, you get to be on the Celebrity Apprentice. One of my favorite running jokes is that Stephen Baldwin has no network of famous friends. Like, the only famous person he seems to know is Alec Baldwin. There's an episode where he has to call famous friends to show up to like give him money, and he's just like repeatedly calling people who hang up on him. And Omarosa is the only person to actually point out this sort of absurdity in the premise, because as she points out, I don't have any famous friends. I'm famous from The Apprentice. Who am I going to call? Sam?
$15, all it takes, cameo.
We got to get the Sam cameo. But yeah, I mean, of course, Omarosa still makes it to the final 5 because she's good TV, right? Like, you're not going to get rid of her. And unlike Survivor, Trump can actually decide who makes it to the finals. But yeah, it's too bad because all of the things that I was genuinely interested in, like branding, strategy, sales, all of that stuff, gone. It's just, yeah, who can call up someone famous? I think the real star of this season is Gene Simmons, the bassist from Kiss. He's kind of like a Sam-like figure, but he probably hasn't been told that he's stupid since the 60s because he's been so famous and successful. He's like a very strange guy who just says things and believes everything he says to be incredibly profound. So he always wants to be the project manager because he believes himself to be a business genius, which makes him great TV, obviously. And like I said, after the first season, every challenge is you're working with a famous company, and the real challenge is who can give the most money to Mark Burnett, right? It's all just product placement. It's really annoying. Gone are the days of setting up a flea market. It's always sell the new Kodak Easy Print ink or whatever. Within like seconds of hearing the challenge, Gene Simmons is like, I've already solved it. It's a Kodak world and we're all living in it. Because in essence, what I've done here is branded the earth as Kodak. And it's like, he believes that he is this business genius who can instantly solve these problems. They would lose this week, I would point out. Because Gene Simmons doesn't believe in refining an idea.
Probably the reason he thinks this, he had a bunch of reality shows.
Really?
One of which was called like Gene Simmons School of Rock or something, where they just did the movie School of Rock, where they had Gene Simmons teach like hoity-toity private school kids how to fucking rock, dude. And I remember him boasting in this show that Kiss produced so much merchandise. This is why it was a good fit for this show. So much merchandise and so much licensing. Take it with a grain of salt because it comes from Gene Simmons. He was boasting to these teenagers that Kiss actually outsold the Beatles. Probably because, I don't know, the Beatles didn't license as many fucking Kiss alarm clocks or something, but...
Yeah, truly like the Krusty the Clown of bands. You know?
Yeah. That's at least where this is coming from for Gene Simmons.
Right. It kind of reminded me of, like, you remember when Julian Casablancas DM'd that girl with the most cringeworthy DM hitting on her? I think it's because, like I said in our Strokes episode, if you haven't had to flex a muscle, try in a while... then like it atrophies and you just become bad at things because all of your attempts always work, right? And so I think like that's what's happened to Gene is like nobody has disagreed with him in 30 years. And so he's just a moron. One of the things I love that he does is the idea is that you get the challenge and you go speak to the Kodak executives to hear like what they want from your campaign. And he refuses to do that because he's like, oh, the Kodak executives, they're in the box. I think outside the box. And if I listen to what they want, then I'm going to conform my idea to an expectation. And so, of course, he completely misses the mark and they lose that week. Jim Cramer is the guest judge on that episode, by the way. One of the great business minds, as Trump puts it. Trump doesn't want to fire Gene Simmons because he's great TV, but Gene Simmons brings two people into the boardroom that haven't done anything wrong that week. And so Trump is forced to fire him. And he's like, I didn't want to fire you. Like, Trump is like telling him, bring this other woman into the boardroom. But Gene Simmons is so stupid that he can't even recognize what Trump is trying to tell him. I kept thinking watching this show, why would these people do this? They're raising money for charity, and all of their charities are for like a family member's charity, right? Like, I think it's like the Hillary Clinton Foundation style stuff. But I kept thinking, like, you're Andrew Dice Clay. You have a great life. Why come on this show and have to supplicate to Donald Trump for weeks on end and be embarrassed and have Trump yell at you and like get humiliated on national TV? And I really think that the reason is that in 2007, it's this strange time where it's pre-social media.
Ding, ding, ding. That's exactly it.
This is just the best way to get yourself in front of millions of people. I think this show would be such a harder sell for real celebrities now because you want to get yourself in front of millions of people. Like, you could just post Instagram. There were very few ways to get yourself in media other than probably like appearing on something like this.
Yeah, especially if your career's on the downswing, as it was in the case of many of these celebrities. No such thing as bad press. This is basically free publicity to get yourself out there. Yeah, I mean, you described The Apprentice as a water cooler show. I think that's so important to like remember. The debates and the discussions about Omarosa or whatever as the villain of season 1, they weren't happening on Twitter. They were happening around the water cooler. It was a show that people talked about in the meat space.
One of my favorite moments from this season was the guys are putting together like an ad campaign and they lose 8 hours of work because Stephen Baldwin stands up on the table, which causes a coffee to spill onto their laptop, ruining all of the materials that they had for the day. And like, I don't care who you are. That's great TV right there.
Fucking Three Stooges material. They walked through a door at the same time, spilled their coffee on the laptop.
I don't care who you are. That there's funny right there. Seeing Stephen Baldwin knock over a table. Yeah, the finale is Piers Morgan versus Trace Atkins, who's like a country western singer. They have to organize a charity gala. I think it was like genuinely funny. You know, Trace, he gets put in charge of managing the Backstreet Boys who are performing at the charity gala. And it's very funny seeing this country music artist try to get all the stuff in their rider. It's very like coffee flavored coffee coated, where like the Backstreet Boys, they need a wheatgrass juice, right? And you get to see this country western singer be like, what in the hell is wheatgrass? You know, he's going around town, he doesn't know what wheatgrass juice is. He's making fun of them for being gay, like that kind of humor. He has to buy them nail polish, the Backstreet Boys, but he doesn't want to hold it, right? Because he's like, I don't want to be seen holding nail polish. And I'm like, bro, you're wearing makeup all the time. Like, what's the difference?
Yep.
Trump's kids are now the advisors on this season. You know, we used to have George and like his other executives, but now it's Ivanka and Don Jr. because I think Trump sees like, oh, this is a free media gig. I might as well give this to my kids.
Ivanka takes very naturally to television. She is made for showbiz in a way that Don Jr. and Eric are not.
Don Jr. is such a sycophant. He always just like restates exactly what his father just said.
He also cheated on his wife with a contestant.
Right. The singer who like wrote a song about him.
DJT.
It's funny that point in the book where Trump talks about how he doesn't like Nepo babies because it makes his kids look bad because they aren't Nepo babies because they actually are good. I mean, that's just so funny to imagine that Trump thinks his kids are legitimately qualified to do any of this. All of like the guy contestants always wear their sunglasses indoors, which I thought was very funny. The guys also often quote Sun Tzu. We must have been going through like a moment in the mid to late 2000s with Sun Tzu because this is like the third or fourth time it's been brought up on this podcast.
This comes in phases. I think in the 80s, the yuppie business Gordon Gekko types were also reading Sun Tzu, or like, I think it's called the Book of Five Rings, which is the samurai Bushido book.
Yeah.
Taking these East Asian classics and thinking that they have secret arcane knowledge that you can apply to the world of business. I don't think it's unique to the 2000s, but I think these things come in waves. And we've said on the pod that the 2000s rhymes in a lot of ways with the 80s. And I think it's part of that.
True. I want to give a quick shout out to Vinny Pastore. He's one of the celebrities this season. The guy who played Big Pussy on The Sopranos. He's like the wise guy of the show, right? He's always got a little remark. You know, he's like, Omarosa, what'd you say her name was? Ponderosa? One of the teams, they named themselves Hydra, who guarded the door to hell. And Vinny has to jump in with, no, that was my ex-wife.
It's not even right. It was guarded by Cerberus.
It's funny because we meet his ex-wife later in the show. She's the recipient of his charity money because she does some like pancreatic cancer research. So he's just using this as like a generic punchline.
Nice. He's using "I hate my wife" humor for his pancreatic cancer researching ex.
Yeah. It's funny, in one scene, he's the project manager, and he's talking about giving orders to other people. And he's like, yeah, you know, in my world, we have the boss, and then soldiers. And I'm like, in your world? You mean acting?
He's a method actor, Giordano, okay? He was living the role.
He, I believe, calls James Gandolfini to one of the events who just straight up doesn't come. So respect to James Gandolfini.
Hell yeah.
Piers is great, I mean, this season, because he's clearly the smartest person in the room, and he's able to retort so well to everyone. So Omarosa's attempts to get under his skin don't work as well. And everybody else is a celebrity, like they're morons. Piers, he was the editor, I think, of a tabloid in Britain. He is smart.
Hey, he went to one of the like fucking short pants and cricket boarding schools before he went to Oxford or Cambridge.
But yeah, I mean, he runs circles around people like Vinny Pastore.
Yeah, because he can read, Giordano. It's the performance-enhancing drug that he has in this context.
He's literate. Yeah. There's one back and forth they have where Piers Morgan tells Vinny Pastore, "You're not Don Corleone."
You called me a fat Italian.
I called you a
You
very...
also said, I helped the girls create the thing.
I didn't call him a fat Italian.
Yes, you did.
I called you...
And that's a racial remark. And the second thing you said to me...
I called him a very fat Italian.
Okay. And the second, so be careful. You're going to, you know, there's going to be two guys following you in London now.
You know something?
So the other thing is,
With
the
respect,
second thing, the second thing,
sorry, you
the
are
second
not,
thing you said to me,
Don Corleone, all right?
Maybe I am.
You're not.
How do you know?
Because I've got every...
You don't know who I am.
You're not Don Corleone.
You have no idea who I am.
Well, I know you're not Don Corleone.
You have no idea.
Well, I have no wish to...
You have no idea.
I'm shocked I never came across this clip in the last 8 years, but Piers Morgan has backstabbed someone, and Donald Trump says...
You know, he really is English, fellas. This is what... I tell you what. Hey, I know a lot about the English. I happen to be part of the Klan. But I'll tell you, you have a lot of English stuff in you, don't you, huh?
Jesus.
No, I was like, no, that was your father. Vinny Pastore's, his elimination is done up to be like The Sopranos, of course. You know, he gets caught being a rat, and he quotes Goodfellas, and he talks about his execution. Anyway, it's all horrible. This season sucks. Don't watch this season. I would watch clips of Gene Simmons. That's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so that wraps up our season 7 discussion. I wanted to call out a few hey, it's the 2000s moments that I thought were notable from other seasons really quickly. Season 2, episode 8, there's a task where they have to make an ad campaign for the NYPD. For recruitment. The losing team decided to go with the theme of promoting the idea that the NDP was a military force battling terrorism. And the execution made it look like New York City was a police state.
You want to hear my idea for an NYPD ad? It's the tagline, "Get Frisky." And it's about bringing back stop and frisk.
Donald Trump would like that.
NYPD's nuts.
Right?
No bad ideas in the brainstorm.
It's a brilliant idea. I really like it. It's got something. Perez Hilton is brought in as a guest judge for season 2. He makes the brilliant strategic call out that the losing team should not have used the term midget in their marketing materials. So you get some, brilliant business insights like this from people like business geniuses like Perez Hilton. I should note, a friend of Chapo, former governor of Illinois, Rob Blagojevich, he was on season 3 of The Celebrity Apprentice, which is why I think Trump pardoned him in his first term.
Nice.
But he's fired in the 9th episode of the season because for his project, he's the project manager for enhancing the 3D experience of the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I mean, this is what we're talking about, folks, with these latter seasons. Really horrible stuff. He mispronounces the castle as Hogwarts and uses the term classes instead of houses. So he gets his Harry Potter knowledge wrong. Can't have that in the business world.
No.
All right, let's move on to our themes then. So I think the biggest through line that I kept seeing through all these episodes is the concept of branding, right? This is the only real business done often is branding, which I think is so perfect because we know that this is kind of Trump's entire business model, right? Is he realized that it was much easier just to slap his name on the work of someone else than it was to actually build something yourself.
Yep. Trump steaks, Trump water bottles, Trump University.
You got to believe in what you're selling.
Yeah. Make yourself a brand. A brand needs visibility. Best way to get yourself some visibility in the year 2004 is reality TV. So Here it is. This is him building the brand. This is him applying the brand. It all comes down to style over substance. Ironically, a thing that would get you fired by Donald Trump on the show The Apprentice. They would say that you lacked substance and you were all style.
Yeah, every episode is drenched in product placement eventually, right? Where Trump is just straight up like doing a reading for the ad, right? Quiznos sandwiches, some of the great sandwiches of the world, you know, like like Trump is bragging to the author of that book, by the way, like, you know, I saved a lot of money because those cameras, when they roll, it's expensive. You know, I was very good at it, which is funny because it's like, bro, you were the president and you're bragging about like how good your Dick's Sporting Goods reads were. Like,
One thing that the book makes clear is that these were the happiest years of Trump's life, is him doing The Apprentice.
And then even the prize was kind of branding, right? We know that the job you got was just to be a spokesperson, to go and cut ribbons, right? Like you were not actually becoming the president of something. Which is too bad because it's like, at least American Idol gave us Kelly Clarkson. We didn't even get any great businessmen from this show. We just got these like kind of shitty Donald Trump knockoffs that became motivational speakers or whatever.
And we got more reality stars.
Yeah, great. When I talk about branding as a theme, I think that the most important part, if you've drifted off while listening to this episode, pay attention here, because this is our big point, which is Trump as a brand is the biggest through line to our episode here. This is where like Trump popularizes and solidifies the brand that we know and love today, or know and recognize today. Because for the show's conceit to work, it needs to present Trump as this mythical titan of industry, right? It has to create that position for him in many ways. And they're always putting him in this position of authority where he can be this business genius, you know, and we get to see his speech patter and trademark bluster on display every week, right? Trump saying things like, the live-in Trump Tower, one of the great buildings of the world, you know, and when he's showing his apartment to the contestants saying, I never show this apartment to people, just presidents and kings. It has to present him as someone who does have kings over at his apartment or whatever, right? And then America takes that in and goes, oh yeah, that's the type of guy this Donald Trump is, right?
Yeah, he's not a washed up has-been developer
who lost $80 million last year.
Who went bankrupt, which in the first episode he glosses over, right? He says he had some money problems, but thanks to his business genius, he clawed out of the hole and he's more successful than ever. He's risen like a phoenix from the ashes. There's all these shots of his private jet, of his helicopter rides. He starts off the pilot talking to the camera in a helicopter. And it's all a fiction. It's all a LARP. The boardroom that they're in is a TV set that they built in Trump Tower. And when the show was over, they tore down the Apprentice set and made that floor his campaign headquarters for his political run. Like, is there a more on-the-nose metaphor for what he was doing and what he was all about?
Trump would talk about how, like, he didn't like when they did his makeup in front of the contestants because it would affect his godlike image, right? This is important for the contestants and for the world, like, at large. This is someone you need to supplicate to, whose respect you have to crave, whose validation you need. It puts him in this position of authority that I think he runs with, like, all the way to the presidency. But it is funny to see, like, so many of his trademark moves, like, coming up over and over again in this story. Like, Trump taking the opportunity to charge CBS for everything back to his own company. So, like, the reward every week is, like, going to a Trump hotel, or, like, getting the penthouse suite to the Taj Mahal, or getting to take the Trump jet to Mar-a-Lago, right? This was, like, a model for how his presidency would work, right? Where it's, like, you get to use your facilities and charge the government for all of this stuff. Like, one of his trademark moves.
Yeah, the Secret Service had to rent out entire floors of Trump Tower to keep the family safe, and he like just collected that money, that taxpayer money.
I love all the players' reaction to like being at Trump's penthouse. I think the quote from the players when they enter is, wow, it was like really rich.
Oh my God. This is like rich, like really, really rich.
And when they go to Mar-a-Lago, they're just like marveling at how expensive everything looks, right? So like their review of Mar-a-Lago is like, you're next to like a $100,000 table and a $50,000 lamp and a $70,000 carpet flown in from all over the world in different time periods. And it's like, that is such a trademark Trump aesthetic, right? Which is, let's just get all this stuff together that looks expensive, even if it doesn't fit together or have any like sort of shared continuity and context context
or aesthetic value of any kind.
Yeah. It's just like, but it all looks expensive, and that's what's important. You just took everything fancy and you put it in a blender. His jet looks the same way.
And it's such a facade. Everything about it is so fake. There's a story from one of the later seasons where Trump isn't even really choosing the winners anymore. I can't remember how involved Mark Burnett is at this point, but the network is saying, oh, it'd be nice if like a person of color won. It'd be nice if a woman won. And obviously there are things outside of the network and Trump's control, given that the project leaders choose who goes to the boardroom. But there's a moment in these later seasons where they're all in the boardroom, they're filming their struggle session. The walls are two-way mirrors, so they're filming, they're watching. Everyone knows it's this pantomime, and they tell the contestants that they need to change the tapes in the cameras, and they stop filming and everyone walks out, and someone from the network tells Trump who to fire, and then he goes back in and he fires the person he's told to fire for the sake of the show, for the sake of the narrative, for the sake of the image, for the sake of the brand, you might even say. In order for the brand to work, we need to tell a particular story, and every single contestant knew this. They said, we knew they didn't have to change tapes. They're filming digitally. There's no tapes to change.
Yeah, there was that story about the edgic too. Remember in Survivor we talked about edgic, which is how they are editing the show can tell you like who is going to win because they want to tell a story, right? And so it's like, well, if you can see the story, then you can see the ending. And so there's that great story where, like, remember I talked about the branding on the rickshaws, where they come up with the idea to put an advertisement on the rickshaw, and that makes $3,000, which is way more than like the $600 in fares that they make. Amy comes up with that idea. But because by the time they're editing this episode, they already know who wins, they edit this scene to make it look like Bill comes up with the idea, right? And one of the producers defends this by saying, well, it's just better storytelling, quote. It's all just a veneer. Like the wood paneling on his jet. It's a fake game show.
He's a fake rich guy on a fake game show. And I got news for you, listener. The economy is just as fake as all of this.
Yeah, we already know that it's just like a few companies passing money back and forth. But it's interesting to know that this kind of branding also extends to the contestants themselves. As we've talked about, players who are able to realize that they fit an archetype and play into it will be rewarded with like attention, which means also that the producers have an incentive to keep you around. There's this great scene in the book where Sam comes across a piece of paper with lines written on it that belongs to Troy. And Troy has cast himself sort of as like the redneck, high school education guy from Idaho. And he's written down all these lines that he's practicing, like, it was prettier than two puppies. She's as mad as a wet ham, right? Because he knows, oh, I have a job to do, and that job is to play the dumb redneck who says these kind of similes or whatever, right? And so he's just like making up these nonsensical sayings, knowing that it fits the archetype the producers want from him. And so all of the players, the good ones, the good players, realize that if they want to be successful on the show, you play into the archetype that the producers are asking you for. So he's saying stuff like, she couldn't sell herself out of a paper bag, which, like, what does that even mean? What do you mean you couldn't sell why would it be easy to sell yourself out of a paper bag? But like Omarosa realizes, hey, I'm the villain. I will purposely be annoying and be cruel and like attack people because that's what I'm here for, right? I'm going to do my purpose. Sam, same thing, right? I'm going to be a sniveling weasel because this is why I'm here.
And because they know that not only does the network like it, but Trump likes it. I think I've said this like 3 times already, but like, this is the man you need to please. This fucking guy.
So again, none of this is like real, right? I mean, it's unfortunate that the reality TV that we find most compelling also happens to be all predicated on this stuff that's meant to trigger this emotional reaction from you. That's all fake.
Speaking of interacting with this one particular guy, our next theme or big idea is that of middle management, right? They're not really competing to be the boss. They're competing to be a sub boss.
Yes. Great point. You know, I think that if there are any like business lessons to be offered from this show, what I would tell my mom, I guess, in like 2005 is like, if it does teach you anything, it's like sort of how to act in a business setting. I don't think it's giving you good advice on like how to do business, but it's like, how should I speak in a white collar job, right? There's a lot of business jargon being thrown around. You can imagine this is where people might have learned terms like circle back, right? in the finale, there's like a long talk where Bill is trying to answer the question, what's your greatest weakness? And he says, I'm never satisfied. And some people say that's a curse. Right. And it's like, yeah, if you want to learn, I guess, maybe like how to speak in a professional setting in this really like bullshit way where you're kind of taking the long way to never really say anything at all. Yeah, this show might be kind of valuable, I guess.
Yeah, like the first half of the finale was so frustrating because when there's still 4, it's the final 4, and they need to whittle it down to 2. The second last challenge isn't anything to do with selling or marketing or branding or anything. It's just 4 job interviews round robin style with the most inane and banal interview questions of all time. Greatest strength, greatest weakness, yada, yada, yada. What do you bring to the table? This is the second last challenge. It's just something that we have all gone through and offers so little value, these interview questions. At the end of the day, an interview is just, do I like your vibe? I think most of the time.
In all of the boardroom scenes, it's Trump being like, you lost, you know, you're a loser. What do you have to say for yourself? And it's like, how do you explain your failure in professional speak? I don't think that this week we adequately presented our sales strategy in a way that was as good as it could have been. You know, like just kind of all this nonsense, like how to speak like someone who's not really saying anything at all. Right. This decade is a very important decade in the evolution of like what we call the knowledge economy and like white collar work. It's a transition decade where these jobs are taking increasing prominence as we pivot away from really like making anything in this country. We move towards a country where everybody's a marketing manager now, right? Or like some kind of email job, right? So I think that this show is important in the way that it speaks to this like burgeoning type of laborer.
It reminds me a lot of Jack Donaghy's business lessons throughout. And like that character is a parody of this entire world, right?
Yeah. Jack Donaghy should have been the host of The Apprentice in the 30 Rock universe. You know?
All right, let's talk about reality TV as new media. I mean, listen to our Survivor episode for a lot of the table setting of this, but
this is mostly a continuation of our conversation last week.
It's a fantasy, right? It's even more of a fantasy than Survivor is because there's not even that survival element to it.
I think it was interesting when we were talking about like the history of reality TV. It was interesting to read about how like in the beginning of reality TV, like people were actually trying to do something artistic with it. What reality TV ended up doing was like smashing the dopamine button, right? And doing the same thing that happens in like every industry. But originally, Gen X people were trying to use this as like a legitimate art form. And the book Cue the Sun talks about one of the first reality shows, which was called American High, where they gave video cameras to like all of the students at a high school and then like assembled like hundreds of hours of footage into like a real story about real people's lives. And it's like not being driven by producers and people like Mark Burnett, but like I think that there is actually like some artistic value to doing a new art form like that. American High, I think, won some awards, but like people didn't really want to watch it that much, right? What they wanted to watch was Survivor or The Apprentice or Fear Factor. And these are the shows that took off in the next like half decade. And the show talks about a lot of like the exploratory reality TV shows from the beginning of this new media form. I didn't realize this. Marlon Brando pitched like a Osbourne's style show about his home life, which that would have been so bad. Like,
he died in 2004. He would have been on death's door.
Yeah, imagine him yelling at his wife. Like he might have been the only guy more unintelligible than Ozzy Osbourne. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, I didn't realize this. They pitched a show based on The Fugitive where like your contestants became fugitives from the law and you deputized every person in America to arrest them. And so like it would be happening in like real time where you would put the word out. If you see these people, like you can make a citizen's arrest on them and then you would follow them, like trying to avoid getting captured. But the author talks about like some of the new ideas, they're being copied by networks. You know, they hear about this great idea for a premise. So for example, like one network decided to make a show called The Chair where they measure your heart rate and they cover you in mosquitoes and whoever has the lowest heart rate wins. But another network hears about this idea and preemptively gets a show on the air first called The Pit, where they measure your heart rate and they like cover you in carnivorous ants.
I just want to flag this contrast where you said, yeah, the Gen X art house reality TV. What are the young people saying? We're curious about them because we're not young anymore and young people are inscrutable to us as we age. Maybe we're worried about them, drugs, sex, alcohol, HIV, etc. We're concerned. We're curious. It's a world we don't understand. Young people don't talk to old people. So what if we let them film their own lives and then we edit it to tell a story? Isn't that kind of beautiful as time goes on? Or we torture someone with carnivorous ants for our own entertainment. Which way, Western man? Give me the ant torture. Give me the ant torture.
I know which show the capitalist country will make. But it kind of just reminded me, reading these books, of like all of these reality TV shows in this decade. Like so many of them are confined to the dustbin of history and like will never be thought of again because they were putting out so much slop in this decade. The book talked about how like one of the biggest shows at the time, where they tried to make it the biggest show, was a show called The Contender. And it was like American Idol, but for boxing, hosted by Sylvester Stallone, you know, the famous boxer. And Trump was like jealous because he was worried that Sylvester Stallone was going to steal his thunder. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember The Contender. And like, I remember all of these shows that no one will ever watch again, but we spent all of these resources making.
Except for us on this pod when we review them for our Contender episode.
Just wait for our From G's to Gents episode. But just a little bit on reality TV as new media and some of the economics. We talked about this mostly on Survivor. Remember with like, oh yeah, you don't have to pay writers anymore.
Don't need to pay actors.
They don't have a proper union the same way that like traditional television does. So just to continue that conversation a bit more, Q the Sun talked about how like, I think in 2007, actually a Futurama writer was like the head of the union. And like one of the big questions that he had was whether or not to include reality workers in the union, because the business model for reality TV was to hire workers, writers, and PAs that were young, single, and childless. Their time cards would just say work on them. The model was to basically like take these young people with no obligations and no ties to like a family and abuse them until they get burnt out. And also don't pay them very much because everybody wants to work in entertainment. So like there's this great exploitation avenue, right? You know, like we said in World of Warcraft, any industry that people want to work in, you're probably going to be exploited.
I may have burned much of my youth in the industry. I'm 40, I'm childless, no health insurance, but thank God I helped make Beauty and the Geek, Fear Factor, Bachelorette, Bachelor, The Contender. Thank God I got those lines on my resume. Gene Simmons' School of Rock, the Ice-T one where they do the same thing but have them rap instead. I think it was called Ice-T's Rap School.
There were no bounds to this exploitation. One of the reality TV writers talks about how their boss one day was just like, yeah, we need you to write ad copy for the show. So clearly outside of the responsibilities that are normally included in the job description. But it's like, do you want to get fired? Then write the ad copy, right? These people do not have a union and are replaceable.
Your card says work. That is your purpose.
Yeah. And so there's this hinge point where they can include the reality workers in the entertainment union, and ultimately they decide not to. And a lot of reality workers who did put their neck out and said that they supported being in the union got punished and basically blackballed from the industry for supporting unionization. And they said like it really hurt them that they didn't follow through with this because they put their neck out and ultimately like suffered for it. One of the other like little innovations from reality TV I find is the fucking episode recaps. One of the things I fucking hate the most about reality TV is the percentage of the time it spends showing you footage you've already seen or will see again. Either because it's a recap at the beginning of the episode, which is maddening. The recap on the finale in these Apprentice episodes is 11 minutes long, 13% of the episode.
All the more infuriating because we know that there's 25 hours of content that go into one 44-minute episode of Survivor. So it's not like they're hurting for content. They might be hurting for content that tells the story that they want to hear. Like, how do you have so much and then so little at the same fucking time?
Yeah, it's like, you ever watch 90 Day Fiancé?
Nope.
Another show that's like eating candy, but like I can't take my eyes off it when it's on, you know? But they show you like the same clips 4 to 5 times because something exciting finally happens, even though, yes, they have 250 hours of footage, like only 10 minutes of it is actually worth watching. And so they just show you that 10 minutes like 3 times in a row, and like before the commercial break, after the commercial break, and then like when it actually is happening in the story. It's awful. I fucking hate reality TV.
I think the recaps are for viewers who have the brain condition from Memento and they forget their memories, or is because they know that people just have it on in the background on their streaming service as they're doing something else.
Right.
Those are like my 2 guesses.
And they show you the tantalizing parts. And you're like, ooh, I got to see this. I got to stick around. I got to watch this. Someone's going to fight. Someone's going to get in an argument.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how that there is some reality TV, I guess, that is worth watching. I guess like The Rehearsal I liked. I thought that the Ali G show was good, I guess. We did an episode on Jackass on this show. That was good.
I think our 4th ever episode.
Yeah.
I think Jackass is the GOAT reality TV show. I would re-record a Jackass episode now that I have podcasting chops. I have more takes.
Is there any more juice to squeeze from that stone? All right, last theme. We just want to talk like a little bit about racism and sexism, because I just found that the nature of the show ended up being like very racist and sexist in a lot of ways, because so many of the challenges at first are very objective. It's like, who can sell this stuff for the most money? But then by the time you get to the end of the show, they're very subjective, and the mold that they want to fill is of a white male businessman, right? Like that's the idea of a businessman in these people's minds. And so they end up just going with that vision that they have, right? And so let me just elaborate on what I mean by this. So for example, in this first season, I thought it was interesting that I think the women win the first 4 episodes, right? Because they're like objective challenges where it's like, who made more money, right? Who made more money selling lemonade? Okay, well, the women won, they made more money. But eventually they're forced to reshuffle the teams together. And anytime there's like an opportunity to fire someone because of like, oh, who stood up for themselves more, it's always the next 4 people to get eliminated are all women.
And it's always very like gendered language. Tammy was too emotional and that's why she got fired or what have you. Or this woman, she didn't stick up for herself enough. Right? It's like too emotional, too many outbursts, not sticking up for yourself enough. You're a wet blanket, you're a doormat. The language that the women get fired with is always pretty gendered.
No one is a better example of sexism in this show than Amy. Amy is like the most hard done by person. Amy basically like never loses a challenge. And anytime they're reshuffling, the players get to pick who they want for their team. And she's always the first person chosen. She comes up with the best ideas. But eventually, Amy is fired in the finale, or like the penultimate episode during the job interviews, because she just doesn't fit the mold of what they think of as an executive, right? And so when they're giving their judgment of Amy, Bill, you know, he comes in with his like, what's your biggest weakness? Oh, I'm never satisfied. The judges, they said they found her irritating. She's like a Stepford wife. All of this very amorphous, subjective criticism that can't be tied to like an actual result, unfortunately.
It's about the intangibles sometimes. And the intangibles is sexism.
Yeah, she's fired because she's not, quote, inspiring to the board members. Well, it's like, what does it mean to be inspiring? It's so much harder to pin down that this person like should have actually been eliminated here.
If only there was a Donald Trump business rule that articulated exactly what inspiring is.
They said, quote, there was a hunger with her and a drive, but I'm not really sure what her motivation is.
Isn't hunger and drive motivation?
Yeah. Yeah, this is someone who never loses a challenge, but then as soon as people have to go off vibes, she's fired.
And then you had the season 4 winner controversy, where Donald Trump finally chooses a non-white person to win The Apprentice, Randall Pinkett. And for a little bit of context, NBC kind of does Trump dirty, where they have a simultaneous Apprentice. They apply at the same time, they film at the same time, and it's run by a recently released from prison Martha Stewart. And the show just doesn't fucking work, because Martha Stewart does not have the same juice that Trump does. She doesn't have a good catchphrase like "you're fired." She tries to say, "you're just not a good fit here." Too wordy, too long. But Donald Trump has this idea. He's going to go off script. He gives Randall Pinkett the job. He makes him the apprentice. Then he asks him to share his prize. He says, I'm interested in hiring both of you because you both did so well. Totally off script. I think it's a live taping. The whole Mark Burnett treatment. And Randall Pinkett says no, because it's so patronizing. He's the first African-American winner and he's asked to share the prize. And he says like, no, fuck you, I won.
I think the show's trying to get a twofer in. Right? Where it's like, yeah, we can get a woman winner and a black winner in the same season and get a twofer out of this.
So yeah, this obviously just comes off as incredibly demeaning and patronizing and condescending.
Yeah. This winner, Randall Pinkett, he would describe how he was like the only black executive at the Trump organization, which I think is like such a funny exception that proves the rule, where it's like, oh yeah, we have a black executive here. He's the guy who got the job from the game show
that we tried to make share his prize.
Yeah. The book isn't quite sure what happened because there's like 8 people who were in the room and 2 people claim he did say the N-word and the other people say they don't remember it. But apparently Trump, when he was trying to decide between Bill and Kwame, did say like, would America accept a black winner? Obviously using much more offensive language. But yeah, it seems to come up all the time where anytime they have like a challenge that is subjective, the men are chosen because it fits what Trump wants from an executive. The season 4 finale comes down to 3 people: Pierce Morgan, Trace Atkins, the country singer, and Carol Alt. And he chooses Pierce and Trace, and the reason he gives is because I would love to see these 2 go at it. And it's like, again, that's entirely subjective. He says it's the United States versus the UK. And it's like, okay, but Carol Alt is also from the United States. They have no ability to elaborate. It's just like it's a judgment call. And like that part can get really frustrating because it's not based on a score.
Yeah, it's based off of the whims of this man who is racist and sexist. I think we can pretty uncontroversially say.
And Trump, he talks often about the beautiful women in the show. You know, he's always trying to get the producers, why aren't the women on the show more beautiful? He tries to kiss so many of the women who were on this show the book talks about. It just seems to happen all the time. He talks openly while the camera's rolling too often how beautiful they are. But there's one woman in season 4, Christy, who's like a blonde woman, right? Trump's type. And Trump just keeps talking about how beautiful she is, right? And I love this one moment where Trump says, you know, she's beautiful. And some people have said she's too beautiful. And I said, there's no such thing. And she happens to be smart. And then Trump says, one of my favorite quotes from the book, he goes, you know, some people say all men are created equal, but that's not true. Some of them are very beautiful and some of them are very smart. And I love that quote from Trump because the some people that he's thinking of there is the United States Declaration of Independence.
The framers never considered a blonde with big tits.
Some people say all men are created equal. I don't believe that. I believe some people are very beautiful. Some people are very smart. Him sort of like half remembering that like, oh yeah, some people, sometimes they say all men are created equal. It's not true. It's like, no. The thing you're thinking of is the founding document of the country you're president of.
Yeah, there's another story of this woman, Jennifer Murphy, who was a beauty pageant contestant that Trump basically poached and like gave her his card and was like, we need to get you on The Apprentice, because he was just so smitten by this beautiful woman. And I bring her up only, listener, because if you have ever encountered the video of a blonde woman singing a very racist parody song, I Want to Be Ninja, spelled Neenja, that is Jennifer Murphy.
Really?
Yes, Apprentice contestant. And the book claims that she actually reached out to Trump about funding a movie adaptation about a white woman who learns to become a ninja, inspired by her racist parody song.
Oh my God. All right, let's do a quick review of the book, Apprentice in Wonderland. I just want to talk about some of the things I loved so much. It's such a great portrait of where Trump was in 2021. He had just lost the election. He's under federal investigation for January 6th. And he's at like a low point in his life. And so this guy comes in and says, hey, I'm writing a book about how great The Apprentice was. And so Trump like agrees to meet with him on like a dozen or so occasions, because of course Trump wants to relive the glory days of like the best years of his life as the game show host that everybody loved. And so we get this very intimate portrait of Trump in 2021. All of these little moments, because this guy basically just like brings in clips of Trump on The Apprentice, like when he's firing Omarosa, and Trump gets to like clap like a seal and be like, wasn't that great? You know, that got huge ratings, some of the best ratings they'd ever seen.
Yeah, there is basically no clip that you will show him that he won't love watching. Like,
they can't get the projector to like hook up to the guy's laptop. And so Trump like calls in like a 20-something kid to like hook up the laptop. Some of these little moments you just figure it's so funny for an ex-president to be like sitting around waiting for a laptop to be connected to projector. And Trump's asking the kid like, do you remember when this was on TV? It's like, this kid was probably 4 years old.
Many of the passages give big Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard energy, like the washed up star reliving the glory days.
He like says at one point, basically like, it's the magazines that are small now.
Yes, yes. But unfortunately, he did become president again, so that metaphor doesn't hold up. Norma Desmond did not have a grand return to stage.
True.
She just killed that guy.
There's a great moment where he shows Trump a clip of him firing someone, and Trump's like, send a copy of that over to my office. And the guy's just like, it's on YouTube, dude. And like I said, he's able to insult people without changing the trajectory of his point, which is a beautiful skill to have. The author brings up the fact that The Apprentice got nominated for Best Reality Show, but The Amazing Race won that year. And Trump says, we beat The Amazing Race in the ratings, and they had a lot more producers, including Harvey Weinstein.
It's so good. I love how he bears all of these grudges because he was so popular with certain people. He was popular with the crew on The View. He was popular at NBC. He was popular with the cast of Will and Grace. And all of these people joined the hashtag resistance in some way, shape, or form. And he has not forgotten. He's not forgotten when they loved him. He's not forgotten when they stabbed him in the back. And he will tell you about it.
Yeah. You know, he's talking about the ratings, right? Because the ratings are a great signal to Trump that people like him, they want to watch him. It's numerical proof of his popularity that he gets ratings. And so Trump talks about how when one of his friends, like Sean Hannity, is on TV, he will TiVo not only like the 10 p.m. showing, but also like the 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. showing to add to Sean Hannity's ratings or whatever. And like... it's such an old person move to be like, oh yeah, I'm helping Sean Hannity. I'm TiVoing all 3 of his time slots. He is loyal, I guess. In this book, at one point, he describes TiVo as probably the greatest invention. All right, let's talk about echoes in the culture real quick. So, I mean, it's just nuts that we had a reality TV show host become the president, right? It's like if Jeff Probst became the president, right? Or like the host of Fear Factor became like one of the most influential people, you know? It reminds me of that line from Back to the Future when Doc says, like, who's the president? And Marty says, Ronald Reagan. And Doc says, the actor? It's like Donald Trump, the game show host.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about, it boosted his confidence. He finally found something he was good at, and he ran with it all the way to the White House. But some of the other echoes in the culture, Piers Morgan, he got his job as the host of Larry King because he did so well. They made over 20 international versions of this show. So not doing Survivor numbers, but still pretty high. Including 2 more domestic versions here in the United States. We've talked about the Martha Stewart version. They were already making 2 seasons of this a year, and now they're adding a Martha Stewart version. I mean, talk about just like oversaturating America with this very stupid premise. In 2012, Mark Burnett successfully convinced Trump to not run for president because nobody gives up a primetime TV job.
Yeah, which is crazy how he got hustled, where Donald Trump thinks that Hollywood movie stars, he thinks that Tom Cruise just desperately wants a primetime TV spot, which is just objectively not true. He's like, I'm getting myself out there on more eyeballs than a A-list Hollywood movie actor, because they're only in 1 or 2 movies a year, and who knows how many screens they're on. I'm there every single week or whatever. But like, dude, I don't think that's how people view TV versus Hollywood acting still to this day. I know like TV has gone up in some people's estimation thanks to prestige drama, but like not reality TV, homie. Like you got hustled by Mark Burnett into sticking on The Apprentice.
And then in 2015, you know, when he leaves to become president, they replace him with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who changes the show's elimination phrase from "you're fired" to "you're terminated, get to the chopper," because instead of leaving in a taxi, they leave in a chopper.
Of course, Predator.
Right. And Trump, he's trying to hide the fact that he's taking so much glee in the fact that these other people failed at doing his job, you know, hosting The Apprentice. But he had to say about it, you know, these guys, Martha Stewart and Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're both big names and they died like dogs. You know,
like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, they died like dogs.
A movie star, can you believe it? And they couldn't get ratings. It's tough. But he supported Hillary, which makes it okay. And Kasich, which makes it even worse. So between Kasich and Hillary, I said, I hope they bomb like a dog. And they did.
Truly a 75-word vocabulary, one of which is dog.
Yeah, they died like a dog. They bombed like a dog. They got fired like a dog. Everything is like a dog.
75 words, 2 metaphors or similes.
Closing thoughts. All right, let's wrap this up. This is probably looking like our longest episode ever.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm having a good time.
I'm having a great time. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So my closing thoughts, I think, are just how much I think Omarosa and Trump have in common. Omarosa played the part of like this very dramatic, combative person, right? She recognized her value to the show, and Trump like respected this, right? Which is why she was on The Apprentice 3 times with deep runs, despite never showing any business acumen, right? And then she was fired by the White House. Like, I mean, remember, she worked for the Donald Trump White House.
Yep. Then she wrote a mean tell-all book.
Right. I think her and Trump are very similar in the sense that there are people who are bad at their job but kept around because they're good TV. Her and Trump share that thing of being so annoying that you can't help talking about them. And Trump was given 24/7 coverage in 2016 because he was annoying, right? Because he was like Omarosa and he understood this, that my value is to get people's blood boiling and they won't be able to stop showing me on TV. And like, this is what they have in common, right? Mm-hmm. When asked about his role in the rise of Donald Trump's presidency due to media coverage, Jeff Zucker, who was the president of CNN, had this to say. So I'm quoting Rahman here, who's the author of that book. When Zucker sat down to talk to me, it wasn't lost on him that he had a major hand in bolstering the candidate who was already a destabilizing force in U.S. politics. What Zucker took away from that was that CNN had an opportunity to keep on winning, even if democracy lost. Quoting Zucker, "We've got our largest share of the primetime audience in 15 years, Zucker told me. We had 34% of the primetime audience. We're within 2 share points of Fox. They're at 36%. And we've got our largest advantage over MSNBC and prime demos in 17 years." So it's like CNN, for all of their bluster about like Donald Trump being a threat to democracy, what do they really care about? They care about ratings, the rating share. It's in their best interest to show Donald Trump as much as possible because he has the same effect that Omarosa has. And so they're going to keep him around in the same way that Mark Burnett is going to keep Omarosa around.
Do you recall what Jeff Zucker's job was before he was at CNN, Giordano?
Oh, he's the president of NBC.
Yeah,
right?
he was the president of NBC when The Apprentice was on from 2000 to 2005. Like, this guy hitched his fucking wagon to Trump. He's also an extremely bad dude. Like, he's like, I think he helped like hire Matt Lauer and or cover up those like sex crimes. But I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head here. He is good TV, and he made that good TV into a run for the presidency. Now, without overstating the case, we do not get the Donald Trump presidency without The Apprentice. Of course. I think that needs to be said. I think another important data point here that we should also say is that the other reason this was able to work, and I'm going to sound like a fucking Bernie dead ender here, is that the Democrats ran one of the worst candidates in their party's history in 2016. I think if there's no term limits and Obama runs a third time, he wins a third time against Trump. I think Bernie Sanders beats Trump in 2016. I think there are probably some other candidates, but you needed this perfect storm of absolute neoliberal democratic incompetence. You know, we are a leftist pod. I can see the comments in the future accusing us of too much libness on this one. But you also do need this fucking reality show. You need the changing viewing habits of Americans. You need the prevalence of reality TV. You need the writers' strikes to make sure that this show keeps going. You need a Mark Burnett and a Jeff Zucker enabling all this shit. It's the fucking chaos theory. The butterfly flaps its wings and all of this happens. But I think looking not only at the incompetence of the Democrats, but also like how did Trump position himself to become, I think, only the second person ever elected to the presidency who was neither a politician nor a general. Maybe the first elected, because I think the only other guy, according to the book, is like one of those like 20s guys. Like a Coolidge, yeah. And I think Coolidge might have just like gotten it after someone died. I can't remember. But yeah, it doesn't happen without this show, without the medium of reality TV. So that's been our 100th episode on The Apprentice. thank you for joining us for this extremely long one, quite possibly the longest one we've ever done.
It's one of the great podcast episodes of the world, I think, honestly. If you look, I mean, it's going to have tremendous ratings. It's one of the longest episodes that we've ever done.
Mm-hmm. And if you've been here since the early days or if you joined late, either way, thank you so much for being a Remember Shuffle listener, for maybe being a Remember Shuffle Patreon subscriber. You can always check us out there. And as always, please like, please subscribe, please write a comment. Really helps us out with the algorithm, helps people find the show.
Yes, I print out every comment we get and I give it a little kiss and I sleep next to them in my bed. We love them so much, you know, they're so great. Even the mean ones. I love all comments.
I frequently get a good laugh out of the mean ones.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for 100 episodes. We've had so much fun doing this show and let's keep it rolling next week. You know, we'll get to Pokemon or I think we got Return of the King coming out next week on the Patreon, so check that out.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, folks. See you later. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
I think the main difference between me and Donald Trump is that I get no pleasure out of saying the words, "You're fired." You're fired. Oh, you're fired. He just makes people sad, and an office can't function that way. No way. You're fired. I think if I had a catchphrase, it would be, "You're hired, and you can work here as long as you want."